2 chapters today, and that would be The Tale of the Three Brothers and the Deathly Hallows. Hey, we finally hit our namesake, and we're starting to make sense of it. And by starting to make sense of it, I mean Harry's got it all figured out and nobody's listening to him, but he is sort of obsessed, so whoops. To keep myself on track today, because I do have class at some point today. Oh, that's not great. Some point this afternoon, and it's the morning, so I should be okay. To keep myself on track, we're doing this in 3 parts. I almost thought I had like 4 fingers up now. 3 parts. Part 1. The nature of mythology. This is sort of really interesting because again we're getting this text within a text thing going on that's just loopy. But at the same time we're also getting sort of this story as a children's story, but somehow connected to history and legend of nobility. It is sort of this really weird spider web, but that really is how mythology tends to work. A lot of times now we have this tendency to read mythology, particularly one that is not our own, and say that it's simply a story that's been made up. For example, Hermione does that here with, well, it's just a morality tale to tell kids not to mess with things they shouldn't mess with. And Ron also has this tendency to sort of say something like this, but Ron's sort of playing the middle road between the two of them, so he might have to sort of step back as we take a look at this. But Hermione really is aggressively saying that this can't be as it's set up, because again, mythology is meant to be just stories, right? And that's actually the issue with mythology and legends, is a lot of people want to say it's just stories. They want to say it can't possibly be true. But a lot of times you're also looking at the possibilities. You're seeing bits and pieces, especially if you've really studied the history, where you can actually track things down. There are stories of natural disasters that have scientifically been proven as actual things. It's hard to look at practically every major mythology from different parts of the world and get a flood narrative, and that's happening. So how can you look at something like that and say that there's no direct connection to what's actually has occurred? There are people that trace the possibility of Arthur Pendragon, King Arthur, to maybe a Roman soldier in Britain at the time of the Saxon invasion. While some people want to say it's just stories, there are certainly other people who want to be able to trace this mythology back into history and point to something and say, there it is. That's Arthur. And here's where all his battles were. Like, that's a study that people have done and are still doing and still can't agree on, because that's also the nature of myth. What we are looking at is the possibility of one version of this story, which in the case of the 3 brothers is that the Pervials, again I'm not going to be able to say any of these names correctly, the Pervials were 3 powerful wizards who created these items. Is sort of, if we do have a basis, it's that. Is that these 3 brothers created these items, and we are following sort of this history through. The invisibility cloak goes through the family into the Potters. The resurrection stone goes through the family into the Guns. And the Elder Wand goes freaking everywhere, because it is a powerful item, and power brings attention to the person. In fact, the fact that it disappeared for so long, because the people we're not hearing about include Grindelwald, who is known to be a very powerful wizard. So the fact that it disappeared, and both Grindelwald and Dumbledore had it and have not had it connected to this legend yet, is pretty impressive. Because I understand the ability for Albus to sort of retain himself and not brag about this. Grindelwald seems like a bit of a surprise, but he also seemed to know the legend, because Albus and Grindelwald did. So maybe knowing the legend, they were like, we're just gonna shut up about this and not bring it up. But what happens then to myth is that it gets all these other stories clumped around it, because people want to be able to explain things. And sometimes the easiest way to explain things is to half make things up. If you want to explain how this family can be so powerful, then isn't it a lot easier to just say, well, they weren't this powerful? They actually tricked death into doing it? And that sort of lets you distance yourself from that. Oh, I don't have to be that powerful because they weren't that powerful. Or they couldn't possibly be that powerful. I don't have to be afraid of them because it was death. And death comes from for everybody, and that's what the story teaches us. And so we end up sort of having this movement through from history into legend and then into myth. And then in this case into a children's story. Because that's sort of even the one step beyond it. Because a mythos you can have for the entire population. But if you really sort of want to designate something as not important, historically how you do it is you say it's for children. The New York Times did not have a best-selling children's literature list until the Harry Potter series. I think about the third one, but I can't guarantee I'm remembering which book it was correctly. But I know the first two topped out their best-selling list, and they went, but this is supposed to be for literature. Because this isn't literature, apparently. If you want people to ignore it, say it's for children. And then very few people are going to listen to it. Case in point, Hermione. Never mind again that certain people, again, if they are paying attention, are going to be able to track this through. Because Harry does. But Harry's also thinking of the fact that, like, well, even as a kid I figured a lot of things out. Maybe kids aren't as stupid as we think they are. But that is sort of the trajectory we're following. If you want to keep it important, you keep it as a legend. If you want to keep it important, but sort of as a metaphor, a myth, if you want it to be a metaphor and unimportant, children's story. Because only, obviously, children can learn anything from it, and it's a really simple lesson. And everybody else can ignore it and be perfectly fine. Which, again, maybe in this case they can be. We don't need everyone running after the Deathly Hallows. But it can be argued both ways. Part 2. What you're willing to do to take care of those you love. Despite him trying to give away the golden trio, I still pity Xenophilius Lovegood, because they've literally kidnapped his daughter. The golden trio is sort of not thinking about that, except in a way that they are, because Hermione makes sure that Ron's covered by the invisibility cloak, so that Ron's family doesn't get in trouble, and I'm like, literally, would you expect Ron to act any different? Like, his family's in trouble, his family's important to him, and Xenophilius literally only has Luna left, and that's what he's saying. I can't lose Luna. I can't lose Luna too. Because we've seen the picture now of her with her mother, and we know that her mother, unfortunately, has died, and in all likelihood Luna saw her die, which is why Luna can see the Thestrals. And then everything sort of goes loopy from there. Because what Harry notices is Luna looks a lot more put together in the photo with her mother than she does attending school. And again, when it's only one parent and they are struggling with that issue anyways, things can go awry. So, yes, I feel sorry for Xenophilius. And I actually understand that he's going to go to different lengths to get his daughter back. He's tried standing up to them and it hasn't been working, and we find out he's been trying to find other ways to actually get his daughter back. It's not like he was right away, let's trick Harry Potter into coming here so I can... He was never expecting that. He took advantage of a situation because his literal only family member left is being held hostage. Can you really say he was involved in that voluntarily? That's one of the much debated philosophical points. What can you consider voluntary? And when you're in the face of death of your only family, I'm curious about your opinions on that one. Okay, and part 3. To go along with the nature of myth, the nature of obsession. Because that's sort of interesting. Harry's got it all figured out. He's actually on track with all of this. Like, he figures out first his cloak, because they all sort of figure that one out, and he's like, wait a minute, no, he was buried in Godric's Hollow, and my family comes from God. I think I am related to that first Paravel brother. Third Paravel brother, sorry. And then he figures out the ring, like he remembers the Gaunt family ring, and he's like, that's where I've heard the name from before. He claimed he was from the Paravels, and he would have cared enough to actually track that through. Wait a minute, there was a stone in that ring. And he actually figures out the snitch before he can get it open. Like, he's just like, Dumbledore sent it to me. Dumbledore sent it to me. He had my father's cloak because he was studying it, because he was a Deathly Hallow, and he sent me the ring, and then he's actually on track. And then he figures out that Voldemort is going for the Elder Wand. Because he's just like, wait a minute. Looking for a wand maker, looking for a different wand maker, looking for a thief of a thing that was probably a what? And then he's probably also going through that Grindelwald was very powerful, and then maybe it's because he had the wand. He hasn't quite gotten to the Dumbledore dueled Grindelwald, and we'll get to that point. But he hasn't quite reached it yet, because he was sort of just following that through when he said Voldemort's name. And I'm surprised he has not slipped up earlier than this. But it goes to show you how much sort of he cares for his friends that he hasn't slipped up to this point. Because literally he insisted on continuing to say both Voldemort's name and that he was alive literally while he was being tortured. And it didn't stop him. But the fear of getting his friends caught has made him stop saying the name. It is literally only the nature of obsession which tends to get inside of you and just grind sort of everything else down, because everything else then becomes unimportant except for this one thing. And he slips up. And it's sort of after Malfoy Manor that he's going to make the realization of, I need to let it go. Because he's seen how damaging this obsession is, both to himself and to those around him. Which I'd like to point out is actually not necessarily, I think, something that Severus Snape learns with his obsession of Lily. Because that's what it is. It's an obsession. The man literally walks over her dead husband and ignores her weeping child to hold her body. It's on the level of obsession. But we're not talking about Snape right now. We will get to him. He's got his own chapter. We will get to it. But we are seeing just how jumbled up and clotted people's heads can get when they do catch on to an obsession. And he's sort of trying to work through it and figure things out, but he's failing to remember again that that's not his focus. Because he talks about like Ron and Hermione being obsessed with the Horcruxes, and Hermione's like, I could hit you right now, you asshole. And maybe she should have. Maybe she should have just smacked him one. Just like, really? We're obsessed? But it is this question of figuring something out and holding on to something. Because that's what it really is. Why this connects to Harry is because Harry is facing down death. He's heard the prophecy. He knows he has to go head to head with Voldemort. And he knows he's likely going to die. And that's not a fun thing to just up and decide, well, yep, I'm going to lose this fight. Guess I'm going to do it anyways. Like, that's not easy. And we haven't even gotten to the point where he finds out that he has to die. But he's facing the strong possibility that he will die. Yes, the idea of mastering death is something that's going to catch his eye because he's scared. It's the same way with the Horcruxes. And for him, he's seeing it as a better possibility because he's not looking at something where he has to hurt other people to achieve it. He's looking at something that can be achieved on its own. You simply have to find these items. There is an obsession there, but I think, again, it's one where he's afraid of things, but he's more afraid of becoming a monster like Voldemort than anything else. So he's got a similar obsession that Voldemort has, but for a similar reason, but with different standards for himself. Like, he's holding himself up to, I'm not going to hurt other people in order to achieve this. And Voldemort's literally like, anything. Anything it takes for me to survive. And that's a difference. Because you can be obsessed on those different levels. Let's stick to Harry's level if we have to be obsessed with anything. And let's follow Harry through with letting it go when it does start hurting other people. It's a good plan. It's a good plan. I like this plan. Okay, so I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.